How are you?
Hey, how are you, Sion?
I'm good. Oh, I like your background. That looks so calming. Oh my gosh.
This is how I'm attending all my meetings, just pretending I'm at the beach somewhere.
Absolutely. That's what yeah, for my work meetings too. I just have it. I'm like, that's where I want to be right now, but I'm actually at home, so it's okay.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for coming. Okay, so we're live on YouTube, so I'll do a little introduction and then we can get started. Hey everyone, again, my name is Sion. I'm the CEO of Blink Social. Our speaker for this time is Ribicca Mamuye. She is she runs a blog called Amro Manor, which means living beautifully in Amharic, and she's also a digital designer working in the tech industry. She's a content creator based out of Seattle, Washington, and a University of Washington alum. And on her blog, she shares fashion, travel, and lifestyle tips. So thank you for coming. We're so excited to have you. I'm really excited for the conversation and questions we have. So I have a list of questions, them answer, but of course, take the conversation where you want, and we're really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
All right. So I gave a little intro, but can you tell us a little bit more about you? Kind of what started Amro Manor, and like what brought you to here, to now.
Yeah, so I started blogging as a result of, was in the business school in college, and I was super, doing the accounting route. It was really boring classes that lacked a lot of creativity and inspiration for me personally. So I was trying to find a space that will enable me to do that, and I had a really good mentor named Rahel, who was just like, you should do this like blogging thing. And I was like, I guess like I like taking pictures and doing all that. So I started it as a creative outlet in college, having been encouraged by her as just an outlet for creativity. And that was like what I really used specifically in the business school. I think there was, I went to Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. There's a huge push for finance and accounting focus, and being somebody that was interested in marketing and information systems, I felt like I just didn't have like what I really wanted to thrive in creativity. So I had to create that space, and that was my way of creating that space for myself. And it ended up, I really wanted to work in the fashion industry on the business side of fashion after graduating. And my blog was something that I actually leveraged to have my interview with a major retailer, to work in the buying offices of a major retailer. So it was something that was actually really helpful for me in my career as well. So I'm really glad that I listened to her. And
Yeah, it's like what you did outside of school and then your like actual degree kind of came together afterwards and actually worked in your favor to kind of be able to let you do both in the way you wanted. That's
yes.
what it sounds
Oh,
like.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It was very, very instrumental in that conversation that I had, because it was, we had conversations about like school and all the great things, but it was like, what specifically with fashion, we don't have a fashion focused
Mm-hmm.
thing at Foster. So it was something that I really had to leverage and be like, oh, here's how I've shown interest in this industry. And it was a great like conversation starter, like interviews are always awkward. So
Yeah.
it definitely made that conversation much simpler and smoother for me.
Yeah. Have you always wanted to work in fashion and kind of on the business side, or was it like you kind of saw them as separate things and then this helped them come together?
I mean, I've always been interested in fashion, like since I was super young, but obviously like coming from an African household, my
Right.
parents were very firm in what they wanted me to do. So it was just like, how can I find a sweet spot that would make them happy? Because I don't want to disappoint them either. But I also don't want to feel like, what I felt in interning for accounting firms and things like that, focused on, specific things. There may be other things that I may like at these firms, but at that time, I just was not, that's not where my heart and interest were.
Right.
So finding something that was, working for the both of
The
us,
perfect middle.
it was a perfect middle ground. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Having to un- kind of unfortunately just have to, recognize that there are expectations that I am expected to meet. And
Yes.
then how do I still do what I want with my life, but meet those expectations? but
Exactly.
not compromise what I want, because it's also still my life at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to just go on like living for other people, but some parts of our culture kind of make us in that way, you know?
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately. It
yeah,
really sucks, but I felt like for me, it kind of felt like I got away with what I really wanted because
right.
I'm happy, you're happy, I don't have to hear it from you.
Trust it and it'll work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's always good. Yeah, definitely. So, your work is very, you know, in person, very like, you know, it's a very relationship focused. Fashion is obviously something that, like, you know, it's clothes, it's tangible things.
yeah.
How has the pandemic and just everything going on right now since, like, if we're going to be honest, like February,
Yeah.
March-ish,
Yeah.
how has that affected your work, not just as a blogger, but kind of, you know, as the digital designer, the fashion marketing, all that kind of work? How has it affected that?
Oh, wait, I completely skipped the part where I said, okay, so I switched from being in
Oh,
the fashion industry into tech.
okay.
And
Oh, okay,
I
okay, okay,
used
okay.
my blog to do that. And how I did that was I was super interested in front end web design.
Okay.
So I took this course with another mentor of mine who really focused his efforts in helping front end web designers understand design. And I was like, well, I kind of like the sweet spot right here. And I was just super interested in UX. I voiced to another mentor of mine that I had interest in UX and just asked, you know, if you have any other projects coming up, I would really just love to jump on board, and ended up doing it that way. So I now work in the tech industry, and my only fashion contribution is happening through my blog, which hasn't been terrible. It's just a
Right.
different
Now you have to make time for it in a different way.
exactly. So like in fashion, my core focus was the consumer, right? Like how do I specifically as a buyer ensure that somebody else walks into a store and has the best experience that they have, in ensuring that all the merchandise is there and I'm like fulfilling all these products. So there's a lot of logistics that goes behind that. The
Mm.
business side of fashion is super interesting, but there's just a lot that people do not know. And
Imagine.
then now it's different because it's the web and you're designing things and there's a whole psychology behind it that I really
Absolutely.
love in
It's
my current job.
fascinating to me. That's the best part. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love. Yeah, yeah. I studied human-centered design, so
I know
I'm.
you did,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, UX is. I love the understanding how people use, have experiences. That part is so fascinating. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes, absolutely. And what I love about what I currently do is a lot of the stuff that we do is equity work.
Mm.
And there's just so much purpose behind that for me, specifically in the times that we're living in talking about the pandemic. Like I think there's been a lot of realizations this year, and hopefully a lot of these doors that existed have been kicked down. We've seen a lot of breakdowns in the systems that have been not working for a long period of time. It's just come to the forefront. We've had really difficult conversations that we should have had years ago. So I feel like that door has been opened, and there's a lot of room and space for us to create and better, the world that we live in. So a lot of necessary conversations are happening. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's a lot of things that, just knowing that the healthcare crisis that we're in, um, looking at how racism has worked in shaping our country, it's been harsh, but I'm so glad that we're here because these are conversations that should have happened years ago, and we're having them now. And I'm hopeful that we are going to, from the next generation that comes after me, from my children, I want them to live in a way better world that I lived in. So I'm just glad that we're able to move that work forward and move that needle forward. So
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. I think now it's like now to a degree we can finally have more candid conversations about them. So I would say that even in I work in corporate right now, and like we're now talking about things that it was just like it wasn't even like people didn't want the space, but those spaces weren't created because it just was like not the right environment for them. But
yeah,
now it's like we can't ignore that anymore. We
yeah.
have to have these conversations. So now it's like, okay, now we can address the elephant in the room. This is great. And we can
It's
finally do
so
that, you
great.
know? So,
It's so great because you just feel
in
so
that
much
way it is
better.
refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it's been really refreshing um to sit through. But yeah, I mean, self care at
Right. Yes, you through. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, let's talk a little bit more about your blog and kind of how have you been using it during COVID, have you been able, do you feel like your blog has given you like a greater platform and you've been able to kind of, you know, build it more during COVID, or do you feel like COVID has impacted, or how has it impacted your blog and blogging?
Well, I think in it's a lot because it's not just COVID, it's like the events that have happened in
Mhm.
this year specifically have opened a lot of doors in regards to having conversations about race with people that you partner with and how that is like important to you, right? So for me, my blog has always been more of a, well, was a lifestyle, um, travel, really travel focused, and obviously we're not traveling right now, but there's been a lot of conversations that I've personally wanted to have in regards to career, in regards to mental health, um, on my blog. And I've really wanted, well, I have been using this time to really open that door to have those conversations, specifically in mental health, and being, you know, well equipped in understanding each part of your well-being. Finances have been something that I've been talking about, and initially I was like, oh my God, like, is this even my space, right? Like when
Right.
you
Am I
so
stepping out
focus,
of bounds? Yeah.
you are, but it really is not a thing, is you are a person, we're very multidimensional, right? Like there's so many factors that I have to think about that even enable me to travel. So money is a huge one, right? Like mental health is a huge one. Travel was a way for me to escape. This was like a way to, it's therapeutic in a way. And I've had to find other ways to really get myself in that space to be mentally well. In African communities, mental health is not something that we commonly talk about.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to put myself out there and having these conversations because it's important. It's important that we
Yeah.
better ourselves to ensure that people that we bring into the world have a better life than we do. That's something that is a very motivating factor for me, is I have to do the work that's necessary to heal myself and heal my trauma and understand myself and care for myself to ensure that I'm a well-equipped, you know, individual to be the best mother that I could be for a person that I will bring, God willing, into the world.
Right.
So, and just, you know, like growing up in an African household, like we don't talk about these things. These things are like, you're supposed to work through the struggle and just understand that you,
Silently.
you know,
Mhm.
keep your head down. Therapy is not something that we talk about. And I think, I don't think that's the way that it should be. I think we should be encouraged to take the best care, you know, for ourselves, and even understanding the topic of, you know, therapy. And that is a privilege, right? It is a costly thing. Um, and hopefully it's something that can be extended out to every American, because people should be, healthcare should be a right in that sense. And this is part of our healthcare. So for me, it's just breaking down those doors, those like limitations and boundaries that you've built for yourself and these algorithms have built for you to just like
Right.
participate in as a content creator, and just saying,
Yeah.
no, like I am, there's plenty of dimensions to me, and I don't want to be limited by these things.
Yeah, I agree. I think what stuck with me the most is I think what you were saying about I see someone else joining. Oh, he's one of our speakers. I think he joined in a little early. Maybe he wants to listen in. um, but I think what really stood out to me about what you were saying is that it sounds like during all of this, that your blog has created an opportunity for you to almost like break the limitations or boundaries you set for yourself as to what you could be as a blogger and content creator. And I
Yeah.
think like, I don't think, at least I personally haven't really thought about this time as being something like where I am now seeing like I had these ideas of who I was
Yeah.
and who I could be, but it's actually so much more than that, you know. And now I can wear these 16 different hats if I want, because I can have those things. Like I can do that,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. And the majority of the times we've been wearing them, right?
Right. We just don't want to recognize the differences.
Exactly.
We're like, yeah, it's all the same. We just clump it all together because you're also one person. So you don't see that as like different dimensions of who you are. You're going to see that as like, well, this is me. All of it is me together. Right.
Exactly. So it's just like walking into that purpose and understanding that you can shift and pivot. You don't have to be limited to certain things that you
Mhm.
like talked about. Like it is okay to grow, you
Right.
know, and not just be this one person that you thought you were going to be, I don't know, 5 years ago.
Right.
There is a different me now because I've lived, and walked through
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. What do you think has there been anything that you talked a little bit about self-care, but have there been things that you feel like have helped you kind of open those boundaries, kind of break those barriers for yourself?
I think the conversations that have like been happening, right? Like that we see, um,
Yeah.
have been really and we feel this in the corporate space, right? Like it is the elephant in the room is everybody knows that I'm black. You should
Right.
all know that I have a black
No
hand.
one is black. Cool.
Yeah. But then now it's like having other people understand the weight of the problems that you've been carrying
Right.
and silently working through, it feels good for that pain to be acknowledged, and sometimes like even when we talk about money has been something that I've been talking about and talking about pay, right? Like for Black women, we are being underpaid, being, the average being between 60 and 63 cents,
Right.
for every dollar that a white man is making, having to work 8 months into the new
Every
year.
time I hear that number, it's so
Yeah. You know what I mean?
bad.
But like, people
Yeah.
should know these things, and
Right.
people should be understanding of the weight that you're carrying as a Black woman. And it feels good to have people acknowledge that. Like, it's not saying treat me as, the queen of anything, but it's like, understand that I am walking through hell and back to get here,
Right.
Um,
And the hell that you don't see, you don't experience.
exactly.
Right. So it's like, how can I get you to understand what you don't see and still recognize that it's real? Because I feel like a lot of the times it's like people can't see that two realities can coexist. They feel like if one reality exists, that it invalidates theirs, and that's where
Exactly.
this comes. It's like, now I feel invalidated because you have a reality I don't understand. It's like,
Exactly. Like, how is that's, yep, you nailed it right there.
definitely. Yeah. So I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about your partnerships. You mentioned you're talking a lot about finances on your blog, and I saw on your Instagram too. You've had some really amazing partnerships with like Baygood and King County to do free COVID testing in Seattle. I saw with Hamdi, as well as your kind of collaboration with BECU and talking about financial well-being. Can you share a little bit about either one or both, if you want to go into both, kind of either how you came about those partnerships? A lot of the times I feel like as young Black entrepreneurs kind of growing in these spaces, it might be difficult to build these collaborations with like such big organizations. So can you talk a little bit about how you got those and what they did for you?
Yes, actually, so Be Good was not a partnership
Okay.
with me. It's something that King County worked on, that my friend Hamdi Muhammad led,
Oh,
who is an incredible advocate for people and really inspires me tremendously. So I was just like volunteering for that event. And it was really,
okay, cool.
yeah, and it was something that really needed to happen, right? Like a lot of communities of color
Definitely.
are feeling this pandemic at a much heavier rate than other communities, and being able to show up for our community, which we should all encourage ourselves to do, was really, really incredible for me. So that was a great experience. But in other partnerships, for me, so bloggers, content creators constantly reach out to folks. And then there's like different agencies that are both in state and out of state or nationally that reach out to you to pitch like various campaigns for you to be on. But for me, it's really important to align myself with brands that I personally use. So BECU was I've been a member with them for a really long time. I've had I really have had great experiences with them. So it felt very on brand for me. And I had an authentic voice in everything that I said. And, talking about pay, I was they were very encouraging to hear my voice and talk about me and the adversities that I've experienced as a Black woman. And I only want to work with people that are like that. I don't want to compromise my authentic voice to, align with anybody else's brand. And I felt like their brand really aligns with mine. And I've seen some of the work that they've done in our community. So it just felt on brand for me. And I know that there's brands that I personally reach out to, that, you know, pitch yourself and saying, hey, here's all the stuff that I'm doing. Love your brand. Hope we can partner together. Or you know, work with small businesses, women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses that you can, you know, collaborate with to just ensure that there is enough awareness and people know about these incredible brands that you're using. So it's definitely a two-way street. And for content creators, one thing I would really encourage is really put yourself out there. Like, the worst thing that you can hear is no. No, it's not that bad. It really is not. Like,
Yeah.
Nothing happened to anybody that was told no. You just get back up and you just, you know, and sometimes it's a no right now, but I may be back, you know, like,
Exactly.
and they may come searching for you. So just keeping hope alive and knowing that there are so many people out there that you can partner with. Like, the world is so big. So please don't narrow it down to the 2 or 3 no's that you hear. Even if it's 100 no's, that one other yes can pay you more than everybody else combined.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a really good point. What's crazy is our last speakers actually kind of touched on that too. They really highlighted, like, they're called Brilliance in Black, their organization that hosts events and have a directory TV channel highlighting Black businesses, the Black community, and, you know, just really showing that being Black is not a monolith and really highlighting the differences within the Black community. But they really talked about as well, just like putting yourself out there. You just have to go for it. You just have to try. You know, and it's like that's what gets you your opportunities. The amazing things you come across is you stepping out of your comfort zone and just trying it, you know. So I think that's so true, is like, it's really a matter of how much you put yourself out there, right? Because no, it's just a no. You never know what a yes could do, right? So
absolutely. So definitely do not give up. No is not no is a word that we should use. Okay, I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna try somewhere else, but don't ever.
Definitely. That's so true. Okay, so last question. We're a little bit less than 10 minutes left. So kind of on that same note of partnerships, collaborations, putting yourself out there, what are some of the obstacles you feel like you've had to, or maybe like the biggest obstacle you feel like you've had to overcome or face as a Black woman who's a content creator, you know, in a space that's predominantly white?
Ah, man.
I know, so that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. I'm like, well, okay, how do I break this down? So sometimes, personally, I obviously have experienced a lot of no's, and I want to be very open about that. And sometimes you get to a space where you're like, maybe just like what I'm doing is not valuable, you know? But really understanding your purpose and who you're doing it for, like, that's what really helps me get back up in those moments where I lose hope and I'm discouraged by something somebody has said, right? Like, people, some people just are not the kindest when they shut doors on you. And sometimes it's important to experience people like that, because I mean, this is something that I pray about, is like, I never want to be that person, right? Like, I always want to be a person that's opening doors for people. I never want to be the person that's closing doors. So it's important that I have these experiences, because I'm like, okay, I have to walk, you know, with so much empathy and understanding of people that I never want them to feel what I'm feeling right now. And even in having experienced these no's, sometimes you become your worst enemy by saying, you know, by fortune telling, because you get to a point where, like, they're not going to want to do this anyway. And it's like, you know, I can only be me in this world. I'm not going to try to be anybody else. And I'm definitely not going to be the one that's going to close the door on myself. I will always give that opportunity for somebody else. It's going to be somebody else's job to close that door on me. I will never, and this is an affirmation I always have to say to myself when I send these emails, I will never be the one that's going to close the door on myself. I am going to relieve myself of that duty, because it's not mine, you know? And that's the thing, is don't ever get to a place where you don't feel like you can't be your authentic self. Because then it's not even about partnerships, but it's about the community that you even want, you know, around you. You want to be your authentic self. You shouldn't want to be anybody else but you. Because I'm an expert in my story, right? And I have to really own that. And it's very apparent when you are writing or creating from spaces where you're not. So each of us are an expert in our story, and that's why you have a community, right? You have a community of people that you know, love sharing love with, or sharing like travel tips, whatever the case may be, is that you have that community. So you should always be encouraged to use your authentic voice. Yes, I understand that I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but that's not my problem. You know, that's fine. I don't mind not being everybody's cup of tea, but I'm not going to do myself a disservice by lowering my frequency to accommodate anybody else's fragility. I'm not going to do that to myself. So
Wow.
Just keep, like, that's the thing, is affirm yourself, even if you have to do it 20 times a day, is don't ever lower your frequency. There will always be people that are willing to meet you where you are. Always. It's just a matter of timing. Mm-hmm. And you have to be consistent. That's something I tell myself every day too. Yeah. It's hard. You're like, I'm balancing so many things in my life, and I have to do this other thing, but be consistent. Don't ever close the door on yourself. Always give another person the ability to do that. It's not your job to tell yourself no.
Yeah.
Like, relieve yourself of that duty. It's not yours.
That's so true. And I think even that in itself could be an affirmation. Like, I relieve myself of this duty to close up the door on myself, because we shouldn't be doing that. That's a disservice to yourself. You're so right. Yeah. That's a really good point. Well, thank you for those gems. Those were amazing. So, okay, I'm going to ask you one last little question, and then we'll see where everyone can find you. Then you can share your socials and things. Yep. What's one book or podcast you're listening to right now that you want to share?
Woo, girl. Okay, hold on. What? Okay, so I am Michelle Obama podcast.
Okay. How would you rate it on a scale?
Well, what's the highest? I love Michelle Obama. Her book was amazing. And it really shaped how I approached this year, although this year decided to become something else. But, we're not going to talk about that. It's just good book, incredible person. Her voice is so therapeutic to me. So I highly recommend that. Maybe just that. Read her book and listen to her.
There we go. That's both. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those. All right. So as we wrap up, where can everyone find you? What can we expect from you in these coming months before 2020 comes to a close?
Oh, man. What could we expect? Okay. So you can find me on Instagram. I am Abyssinia, ABY, hold on, SSINIA. I'm Abyssinia. My blog, Amromenor, AMROMENOR.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Ribicca Mamuye. If you have any questions about career, blogging, content creation, DM me or message me, whatever works for you. I like email too, so you can also email me. What to expect? I think stepping more into myself, honestly, there's some things that, having worked in corporate and now being in a space where I can talk about anything, because there's a lot of, I couldn't work with certain brands while working in the fashion industry because, I signed contracts and exactly. So more of that. I am a free bird. So it feels good to walk into that freedom. And also just not having that like corporate voice, right? Like being in the tech industry, I feel like there's kind of, well, depends on which part of the tech industry that you're on. But I feel like I have more freedom in a way to do and say a lot of things. It's a much, newer industry. So it's much more, chill, and there's not as many. Exactly. I feel like professionalism has a relatively different definition in this space. And I really like that because I can just mold myself or, become whoever it is that I want to be. So it's going to be more of finding my voice or being public about it,
Well, that's amazing. We love to see it. We're excited to see what you put on your blog and Instagram. Thank you so much for coming today. All right, everyone. That's Ribicca. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.